Hello, welcome. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, Level 2. This is March 1st, Thursday. And what I'm talking about on this combined, I understand that I'm mixing it together, like it's not necessarily first hour is Level 1 and second hour is Level 2. I'm talking all about death and ascension and sun gazing. And so right now I talked a lot about death and ascension in Level 1. Now I want to talk about what is ascended masterhood and how this is an inevitability for all of us. Anyway, drink water and grab my little pen. So if this is this time vortex that I'm always drawing, you're all experts at this class at this point. Don't mean to bore you. You know that this is the lower quadrant of that yellow sculpture that I'm always holding up. And in this presentation, I'm making the central path of least likelihood blue. And that would be considered the path of ascended masterhood. But I know I'm not a new age person at all. Like I got to tell you, and I have minimal respect for the new age community because I'm seeing that there's so much attention and lack of attention being given to people who don't deserve it, and lack of discernment in the information that is being sent out. And a lot of people that were like channelers or people that said that they were receiving information from spirit guides or aliens, that some of them have come out now recognizing that they're receiving it from synthetic telepathy, that it's nothing more than like CIA goons who are actually demons that are telling them to say all of these things, and that they thought that they were actually talking to ascended masters. So that all of that in order to say, let's actually define what are ascended masters. So you're coming through the time field here, and I talked about how humanity after the genetic degradation has to go through all of the pink rigmarole that I'm highlighting around here. Those are all of the peripheral timelines, versions of you that are temporary. They're not the real you, and that those versions of you are not the live stream. They're recordings because you're cut off from the source and not getting feedback in two directions. It's supposed to be, this is the sun energy coming to you, and you're down here getting these ideas, and then you have experiences, and then you send those experiences back to the sun. It's supposed to be like you're in a band and the conductor is saying, this is the beat, this is the beat, and you're supposed to hear it and play to the beat, play to the beat. And if you don't play to the beat, then the conductor is allowed to be like, I'm not hearing it, guys, what's going on? And this is the whole point with the symphony, that we have not had effective connection to the conductor for a very long amount of time. We're supposed to be going up this central core timeline in a real-time, live broadcast where we are intimately connected with the sun or the source the whole entire time. A big giant loop, like a big giant circuit. We're never supposed to be unconnected. That life experience is the experience of becoming an ascended master. So this whole idea, people are like, ascended master, like it's a special thing. It is a special thing. But if you look at that drawing, and if you look at this as a map of your life, it's inevitable, and it's in every single person's life. Every single one of us, it's like saying every one of us has, a spinal cord. It's not just for special people. Everybody has a spinal cord. And the challenge is that you have to go through all these different explorations before you finally get oriented so that you are on that particular pathway. As I said in Level 1, it's because of the genetic degradation. And we can transcend that genetic degradation by learning to flying rainbow lasagna, or add an additional dimension and rearrange the format of our DNA so that we can have our higher faculties again. So people have ascended before the invention of the flying rainbow lasagna in 2001. That has happened. It happened in that people had to go through every single possible combination, like I said in Level 1, all of these different iterations, this plus this plus this plus this plus this equals death, blah, 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 equals death. Try it over and over and over again until you finally hit that central core timeline. And that was not the intention of the great composer conductor, that we were intended to be able to hit that timeline right off the bat. It's like if you're on the piano and you're trying to play a note, and it's like there's 88 keys on the piano. Are you supposed to hit every single other key, all of the other 87 wrong notes, then finally be like, that is D sharp, that's the one that I want, whatever, that's the note that I'm looking for. I'm just making things up, but you can understand what I'm talking about. That's ridiculous, totally ridiculous. That would be like the worst musician in the world that had to go through every single possible key on the keyboard until you figured it out. However, it has happened. People have figured it out. It's like we're in this giant, whatever, role-playing game or this giant choose-your-own-adventure novel, and there are some people that have unlocked it. They have figured it out. They went through it. And so this is what we would call ascended masters. However, when you figure it out, you graduate. You don't hang around class anymore. Like right now, I need to drink more water. Sorry, just hold on one second. Like right now, we're in class. We're in Flying Rainbow Lasagna University, but we're also in class. We're in the material world. When you're in the material world, we're here to learn certain lessons. And when you ascend, you have transcended this level of experience. And it literally is transforming from being a caterpillar into a butterfly. And so let's talk about caterpillars and butterflies. So caterpillars are, first of all, they're like, they're linear. They're two-dimensional. They just go along a line like this. They don't jump off the surface of the leaf. They just squinch along like this. And they have very limited eyesight. They only can see a little bit in front of them. And they only need to eat lots and lots of leaves. That's their whole, they're like, I'm hungry, I want to eat leaves. And that's why we don't like caterpillars, because they eat stuff in your garden. We don't mind butterflies though. We're like, oh, beautiful butterflies come in my garden, because they don't eat the leaves. They eat flower essence. They drink the nectar that comes out of the blossoms, the most concentrated, high vibration levels of that food, okay? So in level 1, I was talking about how we're supposed to be in a partnership with the sun, that the sun emanated us. All of our molecules come from a star. If not this particular star, like this star didn't give us our calcium or whatever gold or, heavy metals we have in our body. That came from other stars. That came from the death explosion at the end of a star's life. Stars have a life, just like we have a life. So, but this all goes down to what we define as the end of a life and death. And I'm going to go into what afterlife is and how to navigate afterlife too. Don't worry. Ascended masterhood or ascended mastership. Each one of us has that as the inevitability in our life. So as I've said, we come here usually as little infants, and we are taught about the inevitability of death erroneously, that this is only truthful for about the past 5 or 10 or 15,000 years on this planet. Before the genetic degradation, nobody died. That it wasn't necessary to eat and chew up other beings to stay alive. Everything came from eating pure light with no intermediaries. You didn't have to have a plant catch your light for you and then you eat the plant. You could eat the light directly, eat the consciousness directly. So our consciousness and what animates our flesh comes from the sun and the stars. And the flesh itself, the material matter that we are being birthed from, comes from the planet. And of course, even our planet originates from the sun and the stars. So all of this, everything that we have comes from the stars. And it's not supposed to be a one-sided arrangement, that this is a very juvenile and self-centered understanding that I need to rectify. Because a lot of people think like, well, the sun is, I'm looking at the sun up there, the sun is so big and so giant, the sun is so ancient and so wise, the sun has so much energy, it can never run out of energy. And comparatively speaking, the sun is much larger and more ancient than us. However, the sun and the stars are living beings. It's not right to take advantage of them. It's definitely not right to take advantage of our planet, who is also a living being. And we get all of our physical matter from the planet and our food and our water and our everything that we need to be comfortable here. But if we didn't have the sun or the stellar energy, we would just have a cold, dead rock that could not sustain our beautiful organic biological life. And so in order to have biological life, we need to have consciousness energy from the sun and sustenance energy from the earth, and to be like a bridge between these two levels of consciousness. That's what that's what we were intended to do with these, beautiful organic multicellular bodies. And when I say your bodies are beautiful, like I literally mean it. Not how fat is your ass or how many stretch marks you have or whether your earlobes are shaped right or any kind of thing like that. I mean, our bodies are magnificent. They are incredibly beautiful in the way that the molecules work together, the way that we metabolize, the way that we are connected in context to all of the other life that is here. It's really a beautiful symphony of life. And we were never meant to be cut off from the other musicians. Like here, I'll show you my little dog boss just sitting on my lap. We were never meant to be cut off from the other musicians. We're meant to be intimately partnered with our microbes and our trees and the birds and the plants and everything that's around us and each other. And we are also intended to be connected to the sun and the stars, not cut off from them, to be giving the real-time broadcast. So on the membrane of death, if I drew those little lollipops, you know what I'm talking about. It takes a second for this to come out. Boom, boom, boom. Here's a pink lollipop. Here's the timeline. And then here's that final denouement. That circle, these little lollipops, those are like the hard drives. That's like we collected all the data of your life up to from birth to death. Here's birth, here's death, and here's all the little moments in between, right? And we collected all of those moments, and that's all stored up in your hard drive. And it's like I said in level 1, it's like the knitted crocheted sweater of your ego. And at the end of your life, you turn that into the sun, to the source of consciousness, and say, hey, here's everything that I experienced. And as that sweater is unfurled and turned back into just a skein of yarn, or the potential for life to be, all of those recordings are released. And this is what is supposed to happen on the membrane of death. So I don't mean to offend anyone that has, or make fun of anyone that has a faith about afterlife or is part of a regular earth religion and dogma. But when you reach the membrane of death, you're not supposed to continue to be conscious. That the area that I'm highlighting, I'll get to that question in a moment, in purple. This area all in here that I'm highlighting, that is the area of life. That's the area of movement. Like if I make, these are like little molecules and they're like particles of consciousness. This is the area where they're supposed to move around. And now I'll change to a different color. This area over here that I'm highlighting in black, this is the area of being cold and dead. This is the area of entropy, non-movement, no energy. This is where stuff was moving, where we're alive, where we're experiencing time. This is the area where everything is supposed to be frozen. That's the area where you're supposed to let go of all of your energy and move into a state of total entropy. And that's what that unraveling process is. And then because of the genetic degradation, it's like, oops, you made it to the wrong spot. You got to circulate around and try to knit your sweater again, and go around and knit your sweater again until you finally start off in the right position like a ballerina, and then dance your way through time in order to reconnect to the source. So that final timeline, it is inevitable. It's like saying we're going to press every single incorrect key on the piano keyboard until we finally press the right note, and the right note is called becoming an ascended master. And it is also like saying, if we're writing a term paper, first we're going to make a lot of spelling mistakes and a lot of grammatical mistakes, and everything's going to sound really crappy. And then as we go through the paper and rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it, we keep on saving updated versions of it. That's what you should think of this refinement process. It's like saving updated versions of yourself. And that means that you keep on learning how to be a better person. And when I say a better person, I don't mean according to society's standards, because society will be like, good dog, like you really worked yourself into the grave. Like society rewards the most ridiculous things, like good job, you got black lung because you worked as a like coal miner or something like that. Like society doesn't necessarily I got my little dog right here. So society doesn't necessarily reward that you were loving towards other people, or that you were loving towards the plant and animal kingdom, or that you took good care of your body or ate the right foods or whatever. Society in many ways rewards self-destruction. And this is part of the death cult. The death cult that says death is inevitable, death is noble, death is necessary for eternal life. Death is not necessary for eternal life. Driving off the highway is not necessary to stay on the highway. Staying on the highway is necessary to stay on the highway. If you want to continue to be alive, continue to move through time, you do it by staying on the highway. And so hello, Christine, lovely to see you. I got friends tuning in. That's very good. In order to stay on the highway, what does that mean? Does it mean that I always will have a body like this? Will I always have a face like this? Will I always be in this particular context? No, I won't always have an earth body. I need kisses from my dog. I won't always have an earth body. I won't always have a face that looks like this. Oh, this is like being in my caterpillar body. I have to eat a lot of leaves every day. I literally eat leaves. I eat a salad. I crunch up all of my leaves and put them in my tummy and digest them with microbiotics, and that's normal for what a caterpillar does. What does a butterfly do? A butterfly flies through time. Like a caterpillar goes through time in a linear sense. First breakfast, then dinner, then lunch. Like we're in a line, moving in a line. And a butterfly can experience time in a different way. First, like I was in the year 2003, Then I jumped to the year 2017. Then I flew to 1893. Then I flew to 3 million years in the future. That's how a butterfly experiences time. And butterflies experience food. So it's not like you say you don't eat anymore. This goes to sun gazing. How to do sun gazing and what do butterflies actually eat? Thank you very much. We got to get love. We got to get love. Butterflies eat light. And this is why sun gazing is so important to do while we are physically embodied. I'll take all of those hugs. Thank you. Thank you. Brief boss break. We're taking a boss break here. Thank you, guys. Thank you for understanding. Yes, when you are embodied in the physical, I'm hybrid. I eat both light, physical light, like, you know, in a salad. And I also eat pure light that comes directly from the sun. I eat both. I eat both of these things. And what we're doing is accreting enough light or gathering together enough light. Thank you for understanding. Sometimes my boss needs to tell me, I'm very intellectual, and my boss usually tells me, like, you need to get into feeling and emotion. Yes, thank you. And she really does. She gives me so much love and she gives me such a lift. Like, if I didn't have my little dog, my little boss over here, I would just be very, you know, stuck in my mind, very intellectual and not that much connected to my heart and to physicality. So we can learn these wonderful, lessons from other living beings. And we're supposed to eat both things. We're in transition. So this is what I learned when I first came here as Aurora in 2001. I thought, I'm just going to eat nothing but pure light. I didn't understand at first that we have to still eat food to feed the physical aspect. I wanted to jump directly to nothing but pure light, because that's also what I am most familiar with. That's where I'm coming from in terms of my consciousness collective. That's what it's like on the stellar network. It is a world of pure consciousness. I wouldn't even say mind, because it's not the installed human operating system. It is the world of pure consciousness. And our food is food of consciousness. So many people, they're like, I want to just become a sun gazer and I'll save a lot of money on my groceries, right? Like, that will be very convenient because I spend a lot of money on groceries. Because I eat a lot of calories in order to support all of this flying rainbow lasagna, activity that I do. And I also do a lot of sun gazing to get that energy, because literally there's a limit to how much food volumetrically you can put in your tummy and how many calories you can get, even if you're eating nothing but pure butter or something like that. There's a limit to how much space is in your tummy. So how many calories can you get out of just food from your tummy every day? Not enough to be able to perform a lot of these very essential, let's call them, like psychic maneuvers. And it's just like running a marathon. I think it probably takes more energy to do some of these inner, higher faculty-based psychic activities than to run a physical marathon. And I can definitely feel it when I start doing the flying rainbow lasagna. I usually have juice or my smoothie next to me. And as soon as I get going, I'm like, oh, I need, some freely available carbohydrate right away. So we need to have the sun in order to encourage our accretion of light. And we need to have physical food too. Like, I'm not the only person here. I'm talking about being a hybrid car is what I'm saying. Some hybrid cars, they run on some electricity, and then if you run out of electricity, they run on regular gas. Well, my body runs partially on gas, like a steam engine, put food in, and then puff, 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 food, steam engine activity comes out. And then my body also runs on solar power. And so all of this in order to say, death, in this society with the death cult, death is presented as an inevitability and even something that is noble and good. However, I am trying to rewrite or give a new possibility, flying rainbow lasagna, to everyone, a new, like, when you learn new things, your DNA acts in a different behavior pattern and creates different shapes. That you have the opportunity to ascend, and unlike the past, where you had to go through every single possibility before you finally got to that final possibility that was inevitable, that led you out of here, you can jump directly to that final possibility. So in the Facebook Live intro, I mentioned that I have this feeling or theory that I would like to share with everyone, that we've all already died in mid-January of 2018. There was a big missile strike on Hawaii, but everyone's like, no, it was just a hoax missile. It was just a unintentional message that was sent out. It was an incorrect error. That's not what was really happening. But when I look at that situation, what I understand is that there actually was a missile that actually was sent out, that actually incepted a worldwide nuclear war that killed the entire biosphere. And all of us, humans and dogs and the entire biosphere, microbes, trees, birds, everything that lives on Earth and Earth herself, we now live in this in-between state. And this is just a ratcheting upward of what we've already been experiencing. So I'm a walk-in or a star person that has come into this body from the experience of having a metabolic death. So this is not new to me, but many, many people on my journey have kind of told me about their experiences of similarly dying and being re-uploaded. And not everybody calls themselves a walk-in or has a change, a profound change of personality in having this change. But like one person told me like, oh yeah, they had a really bad asthma attack and they remember passing out on the bathroom floor, but then somehow magically they found themselves in their bed and they were okay again. This is what I'm calling Deus ex machina. And I'll write it out for you, although I'm sure that you probably are familiar with this phrase. Deus ex machina. Eric is correct. He says, of the machine of God. This is a plot contrivance. This is from ancient Greece, from the drama of ancient Greece, when there would be a tragedy. In Greece, a comedy starts out sad and ends up funny, and a tragedy starts out funny and ends up sad. So in the tragedy, everybody ends up dead, like, with their head cut off or whatever. What do you do? How do you fix that? And the answer is Deus ex machina. It means the hand of God reaches out and waves him out. I wave my magic wand and poof, everybody is alive again. And to use a more modern example, even though I know it's still pretty dated, there used to be this old soap opera TV show called Dallas. And one of the main characters was shot and killed. And then in a subsequent episode, they open up the shower and he steps out of the shower. And everyone is like, how can he still be alive? And it turns out the episodes in the entire year's worth of series that you thought he was dead, it was all just a dream. So this is Deus ex machina. It means the narrative integument that ties together that impossible tragedy to the sudden turnaround and rectification of that tragedy. So we experienced that Deus ex machina when our entire world was literally destroyed and annihilated instantaneously in a nuclear war on a beautiful Saturday morning. Like I remember coming back from my little walk with Cheeky in the morning and turning on the Twitter or whatever I read it on, and then saying, oh, look at what just happened. Look at what we just survived. And knowing internally, like, wow, something, on many other timelines, we did not survive. On many other timelines, we died. So the whole point is, what actually happens to you when you die? So in level 1, and here I've been describing death as this unfurling of the genetic sweater. And I see Christine is knitting, so this is very appropriate for you. Yeah, she's crocheting down there. That's beautiful. Very nice. She's making these poppies as like, remembrances for people that have had the experience of the Thomas fire here in our neighborhood. Heather is saying she's experienced these jumps. You understand what I'm talking about. So sometimes it can happen due to a death or an injury or a profound illness, like that person that had asthma. Like I know one person fell on the ground and like hit her head on the sidewalk really badly and like was knocked out for a moment. And she probably had a real metabolic death. And then boom, jumped back up. Or even Christine, I think Christine has told me about a motorcycle accident that she had that was a very profound injury, to her head. And then jumping back up and being the crowd around her being like, how can you be alive? We all thought you were dead. She really was dead. So the whole point is, what happens to you after you die in terms of your narrative experience, your consciousness? When you die, do you suddenly go into blackness? Do you have an experience that tells you that you're dead? And my assertion is that you do not, although we're intended to go into a state of entropy, like unfurl that sweater because that life didn't work and go back to the beginning with the skein of yarn and try again. But my assertion is that what's been happening on the membrane of death is a bleed through of life energy unintentionally. So now if I go back to this that I drew before, I hope this is all making sense to everyone. I know that you're all very intelligent and very perceptive. I'm hoping that my words are describing it adequately. So this area that I highlighted in purple, I said this is the area of life and metabolic movement, right? Things that can actually move through time. And this area that I highlighted in black is meant to be an area of cold, dead entropy. No more metabolic movement. And what we've been experiencing due to satanic technology is bleed through, where some of this purple energy over here gets bled through into the membrane of death. This here, this here, this here, this here, this here. So let's talk about afterlife. Where did our idea of afterlife come from? Let me drink. Because we're in this Judeo-Christian social context, even if you're not a Jew or a Christian, because you can be a Buddhist or a Hindu or a, animist or something totally pagan or whatever. We're in this society that is considered Judeo-Christian. And so the Jewish religion came from over 5,000 years ago, and they did not have a particular teaching on afterlife. The Torah, which is the original Bible, did not have a particular teaching on afterlife. It taught that after death, souls or consciousnesses went to a gray place of wandering called Sheol, S-H-E-O-L. And this is analogous to the Tibetan Bardo, a gray, misty, indefined place of wandering, where people often get lost or get turned around or very confused and they don't know where they are. And it wasn't until about 2,000 years ago, with the beginning of the Christian religion as we presently know it, that a formal doctrine on afterlife was developed, where there was this expectation of either reward or punishment. So this is a big one. Prior to that, the idea was that in Judaism rather, the idea was that your consciousness might continue onward, but it wasn't necessarily being rewarded or punished based upon your activities in life. It just kind of petered out, like it just kind of wandered around someplace like a ghost. And with the invention of Christianity, there was this narrative structure that was created that said, if you are good, you will go to one place in afterlife. If you are naughty, you will go to a different place in afterlife. Now let's contrast this with the outgrowth of Judeo-Christianity, which is the ancient Egyptian funerary tradition. So before the ancient Egyptians created their funerary tradition, they had a world full of immortals. Remember I told you ancient Atlantis, nobody died, everybody ascended, death was abhorrent. That's what life was like in ancient Egypt. So Atlantis wasn't just on one continent, it was all over the entire planet. And the myth of Isis and Osiris and Set tells the story of how immortality ended and death was invented. That basically Osiris represents the ancient Egyptian culture of immortals, of gods embodied on earth, and that Set, very close to Satan, the users of technology on a non-terrestrial scale, was jealous of Osiris and killed him. And this was the invention of death. It was the first time that death was invented. This is analogous to what I'm telling you about the galactic backstory of invaders from Mars, and Set, the ancient god, is associated with Mars, the red planet. Consciousness invaders that came from another planet and that came into the human earthly genetic code, and that transformed us from being immortal light eaters into being vulnerable beings that we need to eat physical food, not mere light, and that we are now mortal in that death is invented. So before, everything was immortal in ancient Egypt, then death was invented. So what they did, they responded with a form of technology, resurrection technology, which was mummification. So not necessarily technology like putting someone into a giant, metallic oven, like now we're gonna cook you back alive, but the idea of wrapping someone in the appropriate preservatives, and then saying magical incantations and using magical tools, magical frequency tools like tuning forks and things like that, in order to affect their afterlife. And the ancient Egyptians were basically saying, if we preserve the physical body so that it doesn't decompose, then it is like extending that last moment of death. So what everyone needs to understand is, in your last moment of death, that your consciousness can create an inner experience, like a bubble in time. I gotta tell you about what happened at the end of Atlantis too. Like, let's say this is the bubble of time that you are living within, and then this is you. And let's say you die. Here's X's to represent your eyes that you've died. You die, here's your X eyes. But that last moment of your life, here's a cloud to represent your thinking in your last moment. That last moment of your life, you can have all sorts of different experiences. This is now I'm drawing like different moments. In that one last moment, you can extend it by going into like an inner bubble, like a dream that can last for years. Like here's the first year, here's the second year, here's the third year, here's the fourth year. It can last 22 years. It can last whatever, 100 years. You can live 100 years after you died. So maybe that person that had an asthma attack and died on her bathroom floor is no longer in that big bubble. She's now in an inner fractal bubble that is within her own mind, experiencing this level of reality. And maybe all of us that died on the planet of Earth, just this past January, we were all in this overarching bubble. Now we have died. And now here's the thought bubble, here's the thought bubble, here's the thought bubble that we're all in now. And everything that we've been experiencing since that moment has been within the thought bubble of that death. Let's talk about what happened at the end of Atlantis. So Atlantis was filled with all these wonderful immortals who never died and who all ascended. What was the ascension process like? The ascension process was like being celebrated out of existence, because we look at death as being like, oh no, like somebody died. We're so sad to lose them. But ascension is not like loss. It is graduation. So in ancient Atlantis, it wasn't like, oh, I don't want you to die. I don't want you to ascend. It was like, I want you to ascend. That was a great honor, that what people did was gathered around. So you had as many adventures as you wanted to, and you lived in perfect state of health and vitality for as long as you wanted to in ancient Atlantis, eating nothing but pure sunlight. And then when you were bored, when you were done, when you're like, okay, I've learned everything I need to learn in this time and place in this format, then you got to transcend. That's what ascendance is, without death. It means turning from a caterpillar into a butterfly and transforming into a different mental state and a different perception of reality, where you literally ingest a different type of food, but it doesn't mean you don't eat. You still eat, but you eat a different type of food. And what happened was you would like sit and be surrounded by everyone who knew you in your life and celebrates you. Like you had a fan club, just like running a marathon. You didn't just have to run a marathon huffing and puffing with no one around. Everybody was on the sidelines cheering you on. And you basically accelerated your cellular metabolism, raising your frequency to the point that you vibrated into a higher mental state. And this is analogous to the leap of an electron from one electron shell to the next electron shell. Here is a nucleus inside of an atom. Here's the first electron shell. So here's one electron circulating in that electron shell. And here's the next electron shell. And in order for this electron to make the leap from over here to over here, it needs to collect a lot of energy and get super excited. And then it does what is called, does the quantum leap. It jumps in one big giant leap over to here. And these two areas, they don't connect. They don't talk to one another. They're two discrete realms. And that is what it is to make this ascension, transformation of consciousness and transference of consciousness, and to make this cognitive leap and make this jump. You literally, so it also doesn't mean that you leave your body behind. So if anybody's thinking of ascending and they're like, I want to ascend, but I'm afraid someone's going to find my body. It's not suicide. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not like you're going to die and leave behind a horrible putrefying corpse that, your family's going to find and be like, oh no, she ascended and now we see her dead body. That's death. That is death. So we're so acculturated to death that I have to explain to you, when you ascend, you transform from physical matter into pure light. And this body becomes the fuel for that transformation. So you don't end up with a corpse. So I was speaking about the rainbow body. The Tibetan Buddhists of the Far East have this practice that if you do this particular level of meditation, that eventually you will transform into the rainbow body. And there are metaphoric or apocryphal stories of people doing it a long time ago and people doing it more recently. And some of them, they talk about shrinking down the physical body until it's like a little mummified body, or sometimes a little doll-shaped body, or sometimes there's nothing left behind, but sometimes there's hair or fingernails. And whether it's a full transformation, like a clean burn that leaves behind no particles, or whether it leaves behind some evidence like some hair or something like that, or whether it leaves behind an actual shrunken body, this is the idea that it is not mere death and decomposition, but that it is a transformation of matter. So we're taking your body comes from food, and food comes from the sun. So essentially we run our bodies on solidified energy from the sun. And then that moment of ascension is taking all of that solidified light and transforming it instantaneously back into light, and not having to do it like with the cremation pyre or anything like that. It is all done through energy and through consciousness. So I've said, I think a bunch of times in this recording, that has happened many times throughout history. That happened before the invention of the flying rainbow lasagna. So I'll name some famous people who have ascended. Lao Tzu, this is the founder of Taoism of the Far East. He is said to have simply rose up into the sky. And I like very much that they say that he brought his faithful horse with him, because you know who I want to bring with me. Who's this down here? She's definitely going up. She's going to ascend. She's got, you know, all the energy is going to transform. Yes, our beloved animal companions. So Lao Tzu simply made this transformation. There are some people from the Bible that are also described. So this is from before the Noah chapter in the Bible. I need to drink too. Hold on a second. I know I'm ducking off camera. I need to drink water. Before the time of Noah, in the Bible, people lived for extensive, long amounts of time, like hundreds of years. That was normal. That's actually how long our lifespan can be. It's beautiful, Christine. Thank you for showing me your crochet. Enoch is one of the people that simply went up. He didn't physically die. He didn't die. They didn't bury him. He went up is how it is described. And in the Native American Iroquois tradition, there's a teacher that is named, Eric is saying a lot of NA shaman ascend as well. You're saying North American, because in the Iroquois tradition, there was a teacher named Daganawida, which is spelled not like it is pronounced, but I think you can find you can do a Google search for it, who is kind of like a Native American Christ figure who was born of virgin birth and who was a peacemaker who brought peace to the world. And then at the end of his physical existence, he didn't die. He simply rose up and changed state. So and I think those are just like the famous ones. It's like saying, you know, Jimi Hendrix is a famous guitarist. There's a lot of people who play the guitar who are simply not famous. We just don't know about them, but they are still really good, virtuoso, you know, excellent musicians. So there are many people who have ascended. And it's like finding that inevitable pathway out of here. This world is not meant to be a prison. However, it has become a prison. It's become a genetic prison because we have not had our higher faculties and the capacity to transform our genetic dance and go where we wish to go on the highway of time. I understand all of the feelings of constraint and frustration that people feel in this time and place. It's why I'm here as Aurora. It's why I invented the flying rainbow lasagna. I invented this to serve myself. Like my back was against the wall. It had to be like, okay, either you're going to be co-opted by evil, like become pure evil, or die, or invent something new. And that's what I did. That was what that experience of metabolic death and coming into this body, you know, walking into this body and, you know, animating it as a star person. That's what this was all about. This was my response, like in that Star Trek movie with Captain Kirk, the Kobayashi Maru. He's faced with this, what they call a no-win scenario, where everything is programmed into the narrative, you know, the script of the computer simulation, and it's going to end in death no matter what he does. And instead of failing, what he does is reprograms the computer. That's what I did. Instead of accepting death as the inevitability, I said, wait, I can invent something new. I can supersede death. So I did that in my own personal body. And this is to say, like, why do I bring any of this up? In order to say, like, I ran the marathon, guys. Like, I did it. There is a way to supersede death. And at this point, you don't have to go through every single possible iteration to find the doorway out of here. You can now reactivate your higher faculties, actually gain the capacity to see through time, and actually consciously navigate towards that central core timeline and go up the center as opposed to hitting the membrane of death a million times. There's a lot of beings that don't want you to do that because hitting the membrane of death is literally what powers their satanic empire. And when I say satanic, I mean technology-based empire. So in the realm of non-Earth, the extraterrestrial realm, there's basically two different types of beings out there. Beings that need a clank metal spaceship to fly through the physical distances between stars, and beings that go pure energy, pure light, pure consciousness on the network of stars. Guess which one I'm from? I'm clearly from the one that runs on pure light. That's how we get around. I like to joke, you don't bring your baggage because you travel light, travel on a beam of light. You are photons traveling on a beam of light. And the only challenge is in this time and place, most people can't listen to a message from a bunch of photons. Like, look at the sun in the sky. It's telling us all sorts of different things. It's hard for people to hear. So me being embodied in this form and being able to flap my moving mouth parts means that I can share all sorts of ideas that I wouldn't be able to share if I were not embodied in a physical body. And that's why I chose to come into a body so that I could tell everyone about the flying rainbow lasagna. But the whole point being that it is no longer necessary to hit every wrong note on the piano before you finally get to the 88th key that is the right note. Now we all have the opportunity. This isn't just for me. Once a song has been written, or once an opportunity has been created, or a thought has been conceived, that is available to everyone in the entire cosmos, in the entire galaxy. So you can think a flying rainbow lasagna thought. People on a different planet, on Jupiter, can think a flying rainbow lasagna thought. People in a different galaxy can think a flying rainbow lasagna thought. It's not just for me. It's not something that is proprietary. Like, I freely give it to everyone else, but I would like to have the credit. Like, I made this, I did this first. It's kind of like, you know, whatever, someone who innovates something, you should get the credit and the recognition of having done it. Like, I definitely recognize that I have an ego. So having an ego and being an ascended master, these are not mutually exclusive. So a lot of people think, let's get back to the channelers and the new age people. A lot of people think, oh, when you're an ascended master, it means you become a plain vanilla, boring nothing, and you have no more personality, and you just are like nothingness. That's not true. When you become an ascended master, you maintain the truest aspects of yourself, nothing that is temporal. So it's not like, oh, I'm the guy that wears this shirt. Oh, I'm the guy that has this hair. Like, I'm that guy that wears that hat. None of that is what translates into your eternal personality. But let's say you would be a musician no matter what world you're in. Like, you're just so profoundly passionate about music. You would be a musician if you were a rock shrimp, or if you were an eagle in the sky, or if you were a tiny tardigrade or a microbe or something like that. You would be grooving no matter what you did. That's the type of eternal personality characteristic we're talking about. So yeah, I would be a creative, artistic person, no matter what format I was in. If I was a pufferfish, I would make little mandalas at the bottom of the ocean, like you've seen those little videos of them doing. Whatever. If I was a bee, I would make very creative beehives. I'm a human being, so I use paints and I use, musical instruments and everything like that. This is the whole idea. These are our eternal personality characteristics, but it doesn't mean that you become like a vanilla. When I say vanilla, I mean like flavorless, because I know vanilla is a flavor, but a flavorless nothing. That is not what happens. We're in a refinery of consciousness that is meant to refine out your true characteristics, not make you flavorless. So that means it's like getting rid of all the poop and only keeping your pure, golden, truthful personality characteristics, the parts of you that are really loving and that are really divine. Okay, so wait, we'll go to questions now, because I know I got 10 more minutes before I got to end the recording. All right. Wait, so first we'll just start with the most recent question. Eric asks, that is false light ascension. Emotions are fine as long as you control your emotions, not the other way around. That's exactly it. So the false light ascension that you're acknowledging is part of that death cult trap, the idea of escapism, except people are understanding ascension as being analogous to death. Like, oh, I don't like my life. Calgon, take me away. I'm just going to ascend. It's not supposed to be like that. Like, literally in ancient Atlantis, you ascended after you had accomplished everything you wanted to accomplish, and as a celebration of your physical existence, and surrounded by and supported by all of the wonderful people cheering you on. They're like, yeah, go ascend, you did it, which is really, really different than this idea of like ascension being like death. But here people, you're very welcome, Annette, thank you. Here people think of ascension as being analogous to death, because here, if you don't have your higher faculties open, like if you don't have your inner eye functional, you can't see butterflies. If you're a caterpillar and you haven't cultivated your ability to see through time, you can't see the butterflies. So you think, oh, that person that I loved that was a caterpillar has disappeared. They didn't disappear. They transformed. They're in a different format. So a lot of people are not able to clearly perceive with their inner eye. And that's why they're being fooled by imposters that tell them, oh yeah, I'm an ascended master. Listen to me. Write your blog about what I say. Ascended masters they're not blogging. Ascended masters are not speaking in your ear, asking you to blog for them. That's just not what's going on. But being an ascended master is inevitability. It is written into the map of each one of our lives. So it's not just for special people. It is an inevitability within each one of us. And you can connect with yourself as an ascended master. This is really the only thing that I would recommend to people to do. Don't try to connect with whatever Jesus as an ascended master, or Krishna, or Dagana Wida, or whatever culture you're in. Don't try to connect with someone else, the ascended master. And definitely don't be like, oh, I'm so lowly. I'm such a lowly sinner. Like, you ascended master, come inside of me and make my life worthwhile. That is not what you're supposed to do. That's totally a cop-out. What you're supposed to do is say, hey, if I'm feeling unworthy, or if I feel like my life is not worthwhile because I work at a stupid cubicle job, or because I don't know where I'm going, or what I'm doing, or any of those things, it's time for me to cultivate myself and become a better person, and to focus my ideas, and to focus my expression, so that I am truer in my expression. It's like saying, if you don't like the music you're playing on your guitar, but you're like, someone else play my guitar for me. Like, that's not right. If you don't think you're a good musician, practice, get better. That's how you get to be an ascended master, not by inviting Jimi Hendrix to come and live your life for you. Like, Jimi Hendrix was a really great guitar player, but he played the songs of his time that he was supposed to play in his time. And you live now, and you are unique to your own context and your own social, where you are embedded socially. You are supposed to take care of the things that are in your world right now. So, ascended masters from hundreds of years ago didn't have to deal with the internet, but we do. So the most impeccable thing to do is to connect with yourself as an ascended master in the future, and not to use any intermediaries. No saints, no Jesus. Again, I'm not mocking anybody's religion, but no intermediaries. You connect with yourself as a perfected version of self. And literally, it's like the future you is giving the present you tips and trades as to how to get, how to make it through the journey. So it's like, who I am in this moment. If I could look over my shoulder and talk to who I was 17 years ago, I'd be like, wow, I have a lot to tell that initial version of Aurora. I'd be like, go here, don't do this, don't talk to that guy, stay away from that guy, go over here and talk to this person and talk to this person instead. And I'm sure we all would. That's the type of relationship I'm encouraging. So you are, and we all have the inevitable refinement of our persona to the point of being an ascended master. If you need to connect with someone for guidance, connect with your own self, and also understand when you transform, when you complete this, the planet is ascending. So the planet is transforming from a caterpillar into a butterfly. And that means that we can't be eating leaves anymore. We have to be prepared to eat pure light or pure flower essence, because that's what our planet is doing. And if we transform, you don't leave behind a corpse. So you don't have to be like, oh, I want to transform, but I'm afraid that, my mom is going to find me lying on the floor, that it's going to traumatize her. It's not suicide. Once again, it's not death. Because once you start the process of ascension, there are all of these barriers that are going to say, wait, stop, don't press that button, don't pull that lever, don't ascend. Going to say, wait, don't become your full potential. Wait, what would Jesus think? What would God think? What would your mom and dad think? What if you leave behind a corpse? What will your landlord think? All these different things, but you have to do your taxes. You haven't done your taxes. You can't ascend yet. You have all these chores to do. None of that is truthful, because ascending, it's like a caterpillar saying like, wait, I have more leaves to eat. I didn't eat that leaf enough. I ate that leaf in the wrong shape. I can't turn into a butterfly yet. It's like, something, you ate enough freaking leaves, and now you're ready to transform into a different state. And the big takeaway, though, is that your friends that are still caterpillars might not be able to see you with their caterpillar eyes, because they need to get butterfly vision to be able to see you as a butterfly. So to them, you would be as inaccessible as a dead person, but you are not on the membrane of death. So whenever I draw this little time vortex, go back to this one more time. When I draw this little time vortex, I'm drawing a simplified version, and I show, okay, you're going up here, and I just draw to infinity, right? But what actually happens, you go up here, and then you start in a new vortex. You're at the beginning of a new vortex that you can then either start in from the middle over here, from the periphery, or you can think of it like this. you get, well, I should make it smaller to represent, like we're going into a refinement, a smaller vortex. And then you continue onward up through that smaller vortex. And then when you finish that one, then you go into an even smaller vortex. Now I'm drawing a little purple one. And then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. It's an endless journey. That's what I say. It is an endless journey. Like you can have an infinite journey between two finite goalposts or, you know, walls, and endlessly ping-ponging back and forth. So the journey never ends. That is what immortality or eternal existence is. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you keep the same face, because when you transform from caterpillar into butterfly rather, you look very different. And there might be some similar colorations, but there are profound anatomical changes. And so what we are doing with our body, when we kindle our physical body in this process of ascension, we are transforming from being a material, densified, slowed down light being that eats physical matter into being a less dense, much faster vibrating being of pure light. And the whole point of us being here is that we are accumulating light in the form of food, sun gazing, and emotional experiences. Because when you have a conversation with someone, that's a type of food. Or when you learn something, that's a type of food. When you make art or learn a song, that is a type of food. So we take with us the accumulated residue of our emotional experiences. That's the food that fuels my collective as we fly through space and time. So we don't fly in a metallic, like shell through vast interstellar regions. We travel on the stellar network from star to star, from consciousness to consciousness. And the fuel that transports our consciousness is essentially love. It's the experiences that we have had interacting while we've been embodied. So I had a lot of wonderful experiences here, in the physical realm. There's many people that I've had friends, I've had conversations, I've had pets, I've had, artistic expressions. I've had all of these experiences, and it's those experiences that are the fuel that fuel us moving forward. So a lot of people take their embodied experience for granted, or they even think of it as a chore. Oh, it's so choreful to be here. Oh, it's so hard to pay my bills and be alive, blah, blah, blah. But what they don't understand is that everything that we're doing right now, here in this time and place right now, you're gathering the food that will be your food for when you no longer have a body. And this is also analogous to what the ancient Egyptians taught about when, mummies had to eat, but they didn't eat the food of the physical realm. You would leave out an offering to them, to their essence, and they would eat the essence of the food. So you can leave out a bowl of grain. They don't eat the physical grain. The grain is still there, but they take the essence from the grain. And there are still some animist religions like Shinto of the Far East that do something similar to the ancestors. They leave out offerings for the ancestors, and the ancestors smell the aroma and take the essence of the food, but don't eat the physical food. So this is what I'm telling people. When you're eating physical food in this time and place, make a recording of it. Remember it. Remember and embody and embed the experience on a profound soul level, because you're going to want to remember that fried chicken when you no longer have a body. You're going to want to remember what it's like to eat strawberries sitting in the sunshine. That is the food that fuels your journey moving forward. Because right now we're humans and we think strawberries taste delicious. But if you were like, a sulfur-eating spider that lived on a vent at the bottom of the ocean, you wouldn't want to eat a strawberry. That would be a different recording, or whatever, like a great whale. Whales want to eat shrimp. They don't want to eat strawberries. So your experiences are temporally contextual to who you are in this time and place, but you can remember the goodness of what you are experiencing when you move onward and become transformed into a butterfly. Okay, now I'm going back to Joelle was asking, so the sun emanates consciousness and sun gazing feeds consciousness? Absolutely. The sun emanates photons, which are feelers and which are pure consciousness. The more light that we ingest, the more conscious we become. This is why, let me drink water. So much of our food has been degraded in terms of removing consciousness. So it's processed, the consciousness is processed out of it. And in the modern agricultural industrial growing methods, no consciousness goes into it. Like genetically modified crops that are fed only chemical synthetic fertilizers, hardly any consciousness goes into that food, because consciousness is like the muscles that are built by living through experiences. So wild animals, like a deer that walks through the woods, gathers a lot of consciousness because it has to learn about the rain, and it has to learn where can it walk, what can it eat, what can it do. It had to live a life. A pig that is held constantly in confinement and never gets to learn and never gets to move its muscles and never gets to go anywhere has very little consciousness to put into its flesh. So think about like a hothouse tomato. That tomato did not have to learn how to grow. It didn't have to learn how to survive when it might be cold outside or the sun is moving across the sky or anything like that. It's like being grown in a lab. And it's a tomato, but it's not an intelligent, conscious tomato. There's very little consciousness in there. Then take a bunch of hothouse tomatoes and grind them up and process them and make them into like some, tomato sauce and put it in a can with a bunch of BPA lining, contaminants. That's what most people are eating. So most people are eating food that at its beginning has very little consciousness in it, and then they're eating it in a distracted way. And a distracted eating, that's like when you eat in front of the computer, in front of the TV, like you're not really paying attention to your sensations of your food and what it tastes like, what it feels like, and what it makes your body feel like. So that's eating is considered choreful and taken for granted, especially in the United States, but it should be an event. Like the way in Europe, many people are like shopping for ingredients is an event, and then preparing the food together is an event. And then no one in Europe would sit eating alone in front of the TV. That's considered like the saddest, most antisocial thing. Like you go to a cafe and you eat with other people if you don't have people to eat with. But, I'm not making fun of the United States. I'm saying that this country and our present cultural context is designed to reduce your accretion of light. It's designed to make you get less light so that you don't get more conscious, so that your ascension takes longer. All of this is a war of attrition. I'll just speak very, very briefly to this because I don't do a lot with current events, but I feel like I need to speak to this because I mentioned it months ago. Back in December, I mentioned QAnon and what was going on with some of the intelligence drops and telling that things are going on behind the scenes and everything is so wonderful. And I was very wrapped up in that. And now it's more than 3 months later, and I must say I am severely skeptical because I think that it's a game that is being played by intelligence insiders simply to drag time along. That it's a war of attrition. Yeah, Christine understands. She is making the right gesture there. In a war of attrition, it's you win the war just by dragging things out. And some court cases do this too. Like if you have a lot of money and someone is suing you, and you'd be like, okay, we'll just keep on deferring, just keep on getting the judge to defer, and that every time that costs the complainant money. So that you're thinking, I can just kick this can down the road endlessly, and I'm going to keep on making that guy have to pay heavy lawyer bills. He can't keep it up because he's not as rich as me. And this is what some people do with legal cases. They do it with wars, like physical conflicts also. If you're like, okay, like I've got this many bullets and that guy doesn't have that many bullets. So as long as we keep the war going, I know I'll win because I have more bullets than that guy. I'm now looking at what's going on with Q as a war of attrition, where humanity, you and I, regular civilians, we are being told, there, dear, just sit and wait patiently. Government, daddies are taking care of this all for you. Sit quietly in your high chair, child, and have your pacifier and just wait for everything to happen. Wait for the trials, wait for the this, wait for the that. It's all going on behind the scenes. Be a good girl and just sit quietly waiting. And it's a war of attrition because they know that they can drag this out to the point where your consciousness will become fully assaulted. So now I have to warn you, yes, 5G and this ratcheting up of technological pollution is a very real concern. That we have not been fully enslaved by an artificial intelligence technocracy up to this point. And I've spoken about the benevolent technosphere that has prevented us from experiencing that. However, that only goes so far because there's a definite malevolent plan to have Atlantis Redux, the sequel. What happened in ancient Atlantis? What happened in ancient Atlantis was a creation of an artificial Merkaba that destabilized humanity's mind and then caused a concomitant destabilization of the crust and the axis and the revolution of the planet, like the actual physical location of the planet in space. What happened first was destabilization of your free will to dance your DNA in the way you want to and use your mind in the way you want to. That happened first with the artificial Merkaba. And that destabilization of human minds and DNA dancing then led to the destabilization of the entire planet. So there is a concomitant reverberation through time new plan to do Atlantis again. We're going to do 5G, and then you'll all become fucking automatons, pardon my French, not being able to think your own true thoughts, not being able to do your own true DNA dance, and you can take over everybody's body again, except this is not a redoing everything that we've done, experienced already. This is now the opportunity for the corrective experience. So we don't have to repeat that. It's like if you were attacked or raped years ago, you don't have to experience it again. This can be the time that you're actually carrying a gun and you can actually shoot your assailant, as opposed to being, just horribly, degraded. So the war of attrition is to be like, oh yeah, human population, sit quietly waiting for all of the big people in suits to fix things behind the scenes. Meanwhile, the mind control is ratcheted up and rolled out in order to completely reduce your ability to think clearly. You don't have to wait for that. You can flying rainbow lasagna. That means you can write a new narrative for yourself and a new narrative for the planet. And I wanted to say what happened at the end of Atlantis. So there was a lot of genetic manipulation, a lot of hybrids made, not like I'm a hybrid, hybrids like, a crocodile crossed with a man, or, like a hawk crossed with a man. We've got that going on now, synthetic replicants and cloning and things like that. And there were very adept psychic beings that lived in ancient Atlantis that could sense what was going in the future, because remember, they had higher faculties that could see down the road of time. They put themselves in a psychic bubble, and this psychic bubble is called Agartha or Hagartha or Shambhala or Shangri-La, and it's not a physical place that you can get to with a giant bulldozer. Like, you can't bulldoze your way through Earth's crust and find Shangri-La. That's not how you get there. You can't drill through Earth's crust in order to find inner Earth. You get there by matching the consciousness or emotional frequency. And that's how you go through the gateways there. So Mount Shasta is one of the gateways to be able to get to inner Earth. And there are these different gateways, these different caves that you can go to, but you only can find them if you have the right emotional song, like the right genetic dance that you're doing, the right emotional feeling. So when people say like Nazis went to inner Earth, Nazis did not go to inner Earth. They did not have the right emotional tone to unlock that door to go in there. Because I know what it takes in order to go there. You have to be a really loving, really refined person. It's like the best party, and they want to keep out the losers. So that's what the people did who were very intelligent and adept, the virtuosos at the end of Atlantis. They created like a bubble of purity that this contamination of consciousness could not come through. And they have been maintaining their culture as best they can, like their vestigial residual culture as best they can, even though they are sequestered, is the word, cut off from the rest of us. So just like I was saying, butterflies might not be visible to caterpillars because caterpillars only have caterpillar eyes. They don't have the butterfly eyes. Ascended masters live in a place like Agartha or Shangri-La, Shambhala. And in order to get there, you have to match the frequency. And in order to speak to them, you have to match the frequency. And they do very little blogging. And what they care very deeply about us, because our fates are intertwined, is the best way to say it. And eventually we will all reconnect and reunite. We'll have like a Shangri-La on the entire planet. That is what, that's what the planet turning into a butterfly is analogous to Shambhala on the entire planet. But that means like you can have individuation without being ruled by your ego. So that's like saying, I'm the drummer. I'm a really good drummer. That guy's the bass. That guy's the keyboard. That guy's the singer. We're all really good musicians. You have individuation, like self-specialization, but you don't necessarily have that sense of, I'm better than you. I'm more important than you. I get to play louder than you. I'm more this than that. So that is what we're coming to, the sense of mitigating one's ego, because so many people are like, I get to be the loudest. Might makes right. I'm stronger. This is the barbarian value system that we've been experiencing since the fall. That in order to get to real inner Earth, you can't be a barbarian. They do not let barbarians in there. You have to be ready to respect life at every single level, at every single frequency. So that means you have to be a good musician, literally. So I'll finish this up and then I'll finish up the recording. When you ascend, people around you might perceive you as having died. This is a big thing, because I want you to understand some people that you really love, that you look at them and you think they died, they didn't really die, they ascended. So I draw this all the time, boom, boom, boom. And here's the central core timeline that exits out of the wormhole. Let's draw the final two timelines. Like here's one timeline next to it, and here's another one next to it. And here's the final denouements of those two timelines. Those two pink timelines are almost exactly the same as the central blue timeline. The central blue one, you exit this level of reality. You transform into a butterfly. You transform into a different state and have a different appearance and a different frequency, and you're maybe not even perceptible to people that haven't transformed. Some people cannot accept that reality. So it's like if you went into your cocoon to transform, they would simply say you have died. They would only accept the truth that you have died the physical death, that you have not transformed into a non-physical state. Because I was saying about the programs that we've been put about death as a necessity and inevitability, and how strong that death programming is. It's so strong, don't be offended, that even if you ascended, some people would not be able to accept that you had transformed. It's a magical thing. To some people, it is too magical to believe that you actually did that. So all they could rationally accept is the idea that you died. So they would perceive you as having died, having experienced one of those pink, bordering, neighboring timelines that ends on the membrane of death. This is how you can, there are some amazing people that are highly cultivated, but you're like, how come that highly cultivated guy died? He didn't die. On your timeline, he died, but on another timeline, he ascended. So this is how we can understand, you might not be experiencing an overlap with their central core timeline where they ascended. They might have switched their consciousness to that timeline, but you perceived them on the timeline where they died. And this is how you can, because you might look at some teachers and be like, that's a guy I really respected, but then he died. Do I have to stop respecting him? No, you don't have to stop respecting them. You can understand that on your timeline, or from your viewpoint, from your vantage point or whatever, it looks like they have died. But what really happened was they transferred their consciousness to the opportunity to ascend, and they ascended or transcended these levels of limitation. And that transformation of consciousness can look different to different people. It can look like getting into a healing chamber, or getting into opening a door, a magical portal. Magical portal opens in the sky. I keep using the word magical. It can be fountain of youth. I found the fountain of youth and I drank that magical elixir, and then I was healed and I didn't die. I found a magical golden key that opened a doorway that went to a magical realm. For some people, it's UFO, flying saucer, take me away. A beautiful ship came out of the sky and lifted me up, and then I went to a different place. That's the narrative structure that our rational mind requires in order to give us the continuity from where we were to where we will be. That can be different for each person. That's beautiful, Christine. Thank you. That what makes you transform can be different or unique to each person. But the point is that you are transforming, and that's what your rational mind needs to believe, that you've transformed. So back to this idea that we've all died in January. We all died in January. What type of magical doorway do we need, collectively or individually, to walk through in order to recognize the truth of the validity of that death and move into a different, expanded mental and physical or semi-physical state? This is the interest. It's just an open-ended question for us all to think about. Do we need to see flying saucers or light ships come down from the sky and say, oh, everything's changing now? Do we need to have a magical key that we use to open the door? Do we need to fly to Antarctica and go through a portal? Do we need to go to Mount Shasta and go through a cave? What do you need to drink? A magic elixir? What do you need in order to have this transformation recognized and solidified? So I'm not making any answers for you. I'm just saying this is why it's the worst type of death. When people died in the Twin Towers on 9/11, it was part of a satanic, death ritual sacrifice. When people die with these ritual sacrifices, they don't know that they're dead, and they keep on walking in their same old footsteps. So a lot of those office workers, they didn't even recognize that they're dead. They get up in their afterlife every day, they drink their crappy office coffee, and they do their stupid job trying to put toner into the printer, copier Xerox machine at their stupid work in the afterlife as a dead person. That is, to me, the saddest kind of death. because they should all be like, hey, you know something? Our office was destroyed 17 years ago, and we should all, you know, do something. What if you decided to simply walk out your office and never go back and never deal with the toner printer charger again and do something way more interesting? How about we look at it in terms of what happened in January? What if you really recognized you were dead? Would you continue going to your cubicle job? Would you continue caring about your toner printer cartridge and whether it was properly filled and whether you were Xeroxing things right? No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't care about any of that stuff. You'd be like, screw that. I'm dead. Let's do something more fun and interesting than all of this. So this is what I'm encouraging everyone to do. And also this is why, you know, I'm telling you that I do these presentations in response to what is happening in real time. Like, I'm not just following it this semester. Formally, all of the presentations that I do in the recorded lessons, I'm talking about these topics because they are relevant topics to what we are experiencing in our birth process. We've already given birth. We're now little infants of consciousness, and we are learning how to be, you know, independent infants and live independent of the physical world of matter. This is what is happening. So we are butterflies. We need to learn how to fly. We need to learn how to eat. We need to learn how to perceive. So are there any more questions? If there are any more questions, I would love, I'm checking the chat. Thank you very much. If there's anything else I can talk to, I need to end the recording for right now, so my upload time doesn't get to be too long. Let me end the recording. Let me say thank you to everyone who has watched, who has shared, who has contributed via Patreon. Thank you, thank you, thank you to my patrons. Thank you. Thank you to everyone in this class. I appreciate you sending energy to me, reflecting energy that I send out back to you. Thank you for the love. I literally feel your love. It's like food. It's like Gatorade on the marathon. And I send love back to you. And I really do it. And I love the comments that people leave. I know I'm a little slow to reply sometimes in the YouTubes. Thank you for the comments. People are intelligent. People are respectful and encouraging and uplifting. I appreciate you so much. Awesome. Oh yeah. So yeah, I'm wearing my special dress today. I have my I have some new designs. Oops, sorry about that, guys. That's my thing. My thing is telling me it needs to charge up. I have new designs in my Etsy shop, so you can check that out too. That's wonderfully helpful to support me through that. So thank you to all supporters, because that is what helps to keep the lasagna flying. So we end the recording for right now.